Most people with a traditional 401k believe the IRS leaves them alone in retirement. Save the money, let it grow, pull from it when you need it. That is the plan most people are working with. It is not wrong, it is just incomplete, and the part that is missing does not show up until age 73. Here is what I want you to understand before anything else. The IRS was never going to let that money sit there forever. Every dollar in a traditional 401k or IRA was put in before taxes were paid on it. The government has been patient, but at 73, that patience ends. Richard spent 36 years working for a manufacturing company in Ohio. He saved consistently, maxed out his contributions for most of his career. By the time he retired at 68, he had just over $500,000 sitting in that account. His pension covered his expenses. His Social Security was coming in. He didn't even need the 401k money, so he left it alone, let it grow. Then he turned 73, and the IRS informed him that the plan had changed. Starting that year, Richard was legally required to withdraw a specific amount from his 401k every year, whether the market was up or down, whether he needed the money or not, whether he wanted to or not. His first required withdrawal was $18,868, taxable income, every dollar of it, stacked on top of his pension, stacked on top of his Social Security. Now here's the part that I think should bother everyone watching this. Richard did not receive a warning. No letter arrived on his 73rd birthday explaining what was about to happen. No reminder from the IRS. No alert from the financial institution holding his account. The rules simply activated, and the penalty for missing it, for simply not knowing, is 25% of whatever amount was not withdrawn. On an $18,000 required withdrawal, that is a $4,500 penalty for doing nothing. What most people do not realize is that the RMD does not arrive alone. It brings consequences almost nobody sees coming. It can push Social Security income into a taxable bracket it was never in before. It can trigger a Medicare surcharge based on income from 2 years earlier. And it gets larger every single year, whether the account grows or not. All of that is manageable, but only if the right moves are made before 73, not after. If this is the kind of thing this channel covers that nobody else is explaining clearly, it might be worth hitting subscribe before we go any further. This video exists so that what happened to Richard does not happen to you. So what exactly is the IRS requiring, and how is the number calculated? The formula is simpler than most people expect. Take the account balance as of December 31st of the previous year. Divide it by a number the IRS assigns based on age, called the distribution period. At age 73, that distribution period is 26.5 years. That is the IRS estimate of remaining life expectancy. So if Richard had $500,000 in his 401k at the end of the year before he turned 73, the calculation looks like this. 500,000 divided by 26.5. That is $18,868. His required withdrawal for that year. Now here is what most people do not see coming. That distribution period gets smaller every year. At 75, it drops to 24.6. At 80, it drops to 20.2. At 85, it drops to 16, which means the percentage of the account the IRS forces out increases every single year. And if the account is still growing, which it often is, the required withdrawal grows too. Richard's $500,000 account, left untouched from 68 to 73, did not stay at $500,000. At a modest 5% annual growth rate, it grew to approximately $638,000. His first RMD was not calculated on $500,000. It was calculated on $638,000. That is $24,075, not $18,000, $24,000. And here is the trap inside the trap that almost nobody warns about. If Richard delays taking his first RMD, The IRS allows a one-time delay to April 1st of the following year. He does not avoid the second RMD. He owes both in the same calendar year. 2 full RMDs, both taxable, both landing on the same tax return, in the same 12 months. That is the kind of thing that quietly pushes a retiree into a tax bracket they have never been in before, because they did not understand the timing. Here is where the RMD stops being just a withdrawal rule and starts being something else entirely. Because the RMD does not exist in isolation. It lands on top of everything else. And what it does to the rest of the tax picture is the part most retirees never understand until they open their return and wonder why they owe so much. The first consequence is Social Security taxation. The IRS uses something called provisional income to determine how much of the Social Security benefit gets taxed. Provisional income is adjusted gross income plus tax-exempt interest plus half of the Social Security benefit. For a single filer, if provisional income is below $25,000, none of the Social Security benefit is taxed. Between $25,000 and $34,000, up to 50% becomes taxable. Above $34,000, up to 85%. For married couples, the thresholds are $32,000 and $44,000. Now here is what the RMD does to those numbers. Richard has Social Security income of $22,000 a year. His pension adds another $18,000. Before the RMD, his provisional income is approximately $31,000. Some of his Social Security is taxable, not all of it. Now add the $24,000 RMD. His provisional income jumps to $55,000. He is now deep in the 85% zone. $18,700 of his Social Security benefit, money he already paid into the system for decades, is now fully taxable income. Not because his life changed, because the RMD activated. The second consequence is the Medicare surcharge. This channel has covered the RMAA 2-year look-back before. The income used to calculate Medicare premiums is not from this year, it is from 2 years ago, which means the RMD Richard takes this year at 73 sets his Medicare premium at 75. If that RMD pushes his modified adjusted gross income above $109,000 as a single filer, his Medicare Part B premium jumps from $202.90 a month to $284.10. That is an extra $974 per year. For 2 consecutive years, from one withdrawal he did not choose to take. This is the interaction that almost no financial article explains clearly. The RMD triggers taxable income. The taxable income sets a Medicare surcharge 2 years later. The surcharge compounds on top of everything else. Richard did not make a bad decision. He just did not know these systems were connected. Here is the part of this conversation that matters most. Because everything covered so far is a problem that has solutions. But those solutions have a window. And the window closes at 73. The first and most powerful move is a Roth conversion. A Roth conversion is the process of moving money from a traditional IRA or 401k into a Roth IRA. The amount converted is taxable income in the year it is moved. But once it is inside the Roth, it grows completely tax-free. It is never subject to required minimum distributions during the owner's lifetime. And it never appears in the provisional income calculation that determines Social Security taxation. Here is why this matters so much in the years before 73. Every dollar moved from a traditional account to a Roth before RMDs begin is a dollar the IRS can never force out. It permanently reduces the future RMD balance, which permanently reduces the forced taxable income that activates at 73. Richard had a window between 68 and 73, 5 years, during which he could have converted strategically. Not everything, not in 1 year, but a carefully sized conversion each year, sized to stay below the IRMAA threshold and keep his provisional income manageable, could have meaningfully reduced what the IRS forced him to take at 73. He did not know the window existed. By the time he found out, it had closed. The second move is less well known, and it is specifically for people who are already past 73 and charitably inclined. It is called a qualified charitable distribution, a QCD. Here is how it works. Instead of taking the RMD as taxable income, a retiree can direct up to $111,000 per year directly from their IRA to a qualified charity. The transfer goes directly from the IRA custodian to the charity. The retiree never touches the money. And here is the critical part. That transfer satisfies the RMD requirement for the year, without the distribution counting as taxable income. It does not appear in adjusted gross income. It does not affect provisional income. It does not trigger the Medicare 2-year lookback. For someone who gives to a church, a hospital, a university, or any qualifying charity, this is not just a generous act. It is one of the most tax-efficient moves available to a retiree over 73. The money that would have gone to the IRS goes to something they actually care about instead. One important note on QCDs: they can only be made from IRAs, not directly from a 401k. For retirees who still have money sitting in a former employer's 401k, rolling it to a traditional IRA first is the necessary step before a QCD is possible. That rollover itself has no immediate tax consequence, but it opens the door to one of the most powerful tools available after the RMD clock has already started. If this video is helping you see something your financial advisor has not explained, subscribing means you will not miss what this channel covers next. One thing worth pausing on before the close. The brief for this video mentions age 73 as the RMD's starting age. That is correct for people born between 1951 and 1959. But for people born in 1960 or later, the Secure 2.0 Act raised that age to 75. This channel's audience skews toward people in their 60s right now. Many of them were born in or after 1960, which means for those viewers, the window before RMDs begin is 2 years longer than they may have heard. That is not a small difference. 2 additional years of Roth conversion opportunity. 2 additional years of keeping the traditional account balance lower before the forced withdrawals begin. 2 additional years of managing provisional income on their own terms. The rule is not 73 for everyone. Know which category applies to the specific birth year, and use the window accordingly. Richard eventually figured out what had happened. He worked with a tax professional to start sizing his future RMDs more carefully. He began directing a portion of his annual required withdrawal to a charity he had supported for years, as a qualified charitable distribution. It did not undo what had already happened, but it changed what the next 10 years looked like. The RMD rule is not going away. It is not a loophole or a bureaucratic oversight. It is the IRS collecting on a promise that money put in before taxes would eventually be taxed. The only question is when and on whose terms. People who find out about this rule at 65 have options. People who find out at 72 have fewer. People who find out the year it activates, like Richard, are managing consequences instead of preventing them. That is the only difference. Not income, not how much was saved, just information and when it arrived. If this video gave you something your financial advisor has not explained, share it with someone who has a 401k and is approaching their 60s. They need to see this before the window closes. And if this channel has been giving you clarity on things that are genuinely hard to find elsewhere, subscribing means you will not miss what comes next. Drop a comment below with one word. Did you know the RMD rule existed before watching this video? Yes or no? It takes 2 seconds and it tells this channel exactly what to cover next.